Happy National Signing Day, everybody, and welcome into Gamecock Central. This is GC Live, Kendall Smith and Jack Veltri with the little evening edition of the show. But Jack, we're not on as late as you were yesterday watching the college football playoff rankings. We'll get into all of that in just a second, but hope that you all are doing well. We appreciate you joining us. It has been a busy day in the world of Gamecock athletics, specifically Gamecock football, National Signing Day, early signing day, but Wes and I just call it National Signing Day because essentially you're seeing the majority of your commits signing on this day in the early signing period in December. We saw that today. Things going to plan for South Carolina, a couple of flips. So overall, a really, really solid day for the Gamecocks. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But Jack, first and foremost, we're coming off of the college football playoff rankings. It's almost 24 hours later. We are sitting here now on GC Live. How are you?
I'm doing well, I guess, Kendall. I'm smiling, so I guess it's a good thing. I'm here with you talking Gamecocks, so that's always a good thing. But, yeah, look, it's been a whirlwind the last 24 hours, I would say. It's been busy, but you know what? It's not all bad. Look, I got my Christmas tree somewhere there in the dark background. But, you know, it's, we're rolling. So, you know what? There's always a way to find some joy. But how are you doing?
I like that. A little find some joy plug in there. That's great.
Yeah, I think people could use that.
Well, we're going to talk about all of that here today because I feel like there is so much to get into. We've obviously talked a ton about it on Gamecock Central already today. And you were on last night with Wes Mitchell. Chris Clark joined you as well. When the playoff rankings came out, South Carolina ranked 14th. And I think there's a lot of questions about the rankings, why they are the way that they are, why South Carolina is where they are in the rankings. Shane Beamer talked about it today, so we will discuss some of the things that he said in his press conference. But Jack, I'm curious, just from your perspective yesterday, when you're watching with Wes and you see the rankings and you see South Carolina falling into 14th place, what was the initial reaction from you?
Shoot, most people have seen my reaction by now, but I was shocked. I'm not gonna lie. Like Wes had his TV ahead of mine because I'm on YouTube TV, so streaming's a little bit behind. But I could hear his wife in the background saying no, and then Wes said 14th, and I'm like what? All right. Let me preface this. I'm not surprised that they are behind Alabama and Ole Miss. I'm more surprised that South Carolina only moved up one spot. And I get it's tougher to move up higher in the rankings when you are closer to the top, but you just beat number 12 Clemson in Death Valley. And all that told me that moving up from 15 to 14 was that the committee could care less about what you just did and that win meant nothing, essentially. So I get it from the aspect of, like I said, Alabama, Ole Miss, they have the head-to-head. They should probably be ahead. But the other thing is when Alabama's ahead of Miami, for instance, a team that South Carolina and Ole Miss should also be ahead of. What is up with that? Why is Alabama getting special treatment compared to everyone else, seemingly? And why are they ahead when they both have the same records as, Alabama and stuff, and they're being left behind? I mean, Alabama's got 2 god-awful losses on their schedule, yet no one bats an eye. So, I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts from yesterday. I think the committee got it wrong. I do think South Carolina is one of the best 12 teams, but there's nothing we could do now. And pretty much based on what Ward Manuel, the committee chair, said yesterday, there's no way South Carolina or any of these teams on the outside looking in are moving up. So it is what it is. But I was kind of shocked, to be honest.
Yeah, and shocked and disappointed were the words that Shane Beamer used to describe how he felt about yesterday's results, rankings. And, I think a lot of people are just confused, and he said it as well. He doesn't really know what the committee is looking at. And I think that's the hardest part for people, because you talk about that head-to-head, and then you see a team like Ohio State lose to Michigan, who has not had its best year, and Ohio State only moves down 4 spots. And so you're looking at this and you're like, all right, make it make sense. I mean, Jack, do you really think it has to do with the fact that South Carolina is in Alabama? South Carolina, I mean, you look at it and Alabama has the head-to-head win over South Carolina, as does Ole Miss. But when you think of strength of schedule, I mean, how much is this playing into what we're seeing?
All right. Yeah, I think with what you're basically saying is there a brand bias out there? Yes. Yes, there is. I am fully a believer in that because we saw it years ago when Alabama got into the playoff without a conference championship at 11-1 over an Ohio State team that, granted, they lost 2 games, but they were the Big Ten champion and rolling back in 2017. As we all know, that was the year of 2nd and 26 when Tua Tagovailoa won the national championship for Alabama over Georgia. Then last year, Alabama, despite winning a conference championship, gets in over an undefeated Florida State team who had an injury to their quarterback. So the precedent has been set before that Alabama will get the benefit of the doubt from the committee. And I think, to kind of answer your question, I'm just shocked that the committee did that again. And it feels too good to be true that an Alabama team that lost pretty handedly to Oklahoma and only scored 3 points in Norman, when you go back and look at South Carolina's schedule, they beat Oklahoma in the first 5 minutes of that game, and it was over in a 35-9 defeat. And then Alabama also loses to Vanderbilt. Mind you, Carolina beat that team 28-7, is the only team, to my knowledge, that has beaten Vanderbilt by multiple scores this year in convincing fashion. So I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. It's just I feel like South Carolina, even if the roles were reversed, let's say Alabama is the team that's on a roll. Let's say they are winning this, they're on the 6-game winning streak, and they're the best team in college, like they're the hottest team in the sport right now. And South Carolina is that Alabama team that just lost to Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. Don't you think Alabama would jump South Carolina without question? I totally think so. You can disagree if you want to. I know many of you will agree with me on that. I also think it just has something to do with, big brand bias. Like, money talks. Like, when you're watching the college football playoff as an average fan that has no rooting interest, who you gonna pick? South Carolina or Alabama to watch? You'd probably want to watch Alabama. And that's not to say it's the right thing to do, but ESPN and the college football playoff committee, they're all about making the dough. So it is what it is, but there's nothing you can do about it now. And South Carolina, you just hope. It would really suck, to be honest. Like, I know bowl games are great and all. It would suck to see this team not get to go to the Citrus Bowl. Like, any bowl game in Florida would be great. But for the season you had, and you should be the next best team that didn't make the playoff in the SEC, you may not even go to the Citrus Bowl, because guess what? Ole Miss is ranked ahead of you. And also, guess what? If Alabama is indeed left out of the playoff because a Clemson beats SMU, then Alabama would probably be that team that goes to the Citrus Bowl. Then we're talking about either going to the Gator or ReliaQuest Bowl. So it is what it is at this point. It literally is just, it's shocking. And just hearing the committee chair, I know I'm continuing on this tangent here, but just hearing the committee chair, Ward Manuel, basically say yesterday that there are no more data points. And that means that any of these teams on the outside, they don't have another game to play. So the committee's not going to rearrange the order of those teams on the outside. Like, there's nothing that can happen. Even though Clemson, keep in mind, South Carolina beat Clemson out in Death Valley this past weekend. If Clemson wins the ACC championship, that is a greater win on South Carolina's schedule than most teams can have. Like, unless Georgia wins the SEC title, which is a whole nother thing. Like, how can the committee basically, Shane Beamer brought it up today, how can the committee say that this weekend essentially is useless and doesn't matter unless you're on the inside? Like, unless you're in the bracket right now and you lose or whatever, you could potentially move around. But if you're on the outside, you have no chance. I find that to be a load of, you know what, and I don't agree with that at all. A lot.
I know. There we go.
It's a lot to break down, Kendall.
It is so much. And you're looking at this, and I feel like there are a million thoughts going through my head, and I'll just be sitting there throughout my day. And then I just think about something else. I'm like, wait, what if this scenario happened? Or why is it this way? Or how are things playing out the way that they are? And Shane Beamer obviously voiced his frustration with that earlier today. And, you know, you can look at it, and there are so many different things I think that you can point out if you're South Carolina to be frustrated about. But obviously at this point, there's not much that they can do. I mean, given that it was said, if you are on the outside looking in and you're not in the top 12, your chances of getting in the top 12 are essentially zero. So South Carolina, as much of a bummer as it is for the Gamecocks, are going to have to move on from this. They're going to have to look forward. But I think what the toughest part is, Jack, and you mentioned it, okay, if Alabama doesn't make it, if they get knocked out because Clemson wins, then they're probably going to the Citrus Bowl. And then you're looking at Ole Miss, who's ranked above South Carolina. They're probably going to Tampa. So then if you're South Carolina and you're going to the next bowl, which is the Gator Bowl, it's hard because you look at the way that South Carolina went to the Gator Bowl just a couple of years ago, and they've had a completely different season since then. And I get it. It's not just about what happens with you. It's external factors as well and how other teams perform and how they do. But I think if you're South Carolina and you're not going to the Citrus Bowl or you're not going to Tampa, I think that's tough. So that's another thing, you look at it from that perspective as well. South Carolina is playing its best. They have been one of the most consistent teams in the country over the last 6 weeks. They have one of the best players on the country who is on the rise in Lenoris Sellers. He's one of the most intriguing, interesting players to watch at this point in college football. So I think just at this point in time and the way that things have shaped out for South Carolina up until this point, it would be extremely disappointing to see Alabama not make it, go to the Citrus Bowl, Ole Miss go to a better bowl, quote unquote, than South Carolina, and then South Carolina get bumped down to the third best bowl for an SEC team outside of the college football playoff with the season that they've had.
Yeah, and look, it also speaks to just how deep the SEC is. I totally understand it that this was going to SEC teams were going to get left out, and we might be in a predicament where you only get Georgia and Texas in the playoff, and that's it. Unless am I missing a team that's inside the bowl besides Alabama right now? I think that's it. Tennessee. So there's 3 teams in there, and all of them are pretty much in. But it's the 3 teams that could be on the outside. And look, it's just, I get any bowl game is going to be great and all, but I've heard the experiences from all you guys from a media perspective about how bad the Gator Bowl is in terms of hospitality and stuff. And, I'm sure South Carolina, it's not about us. It's not about me, but it's and it's for the players too. And the coaches, they probably want to go to a different bowl game. It's like saying a few years ago when South Carolina went 8-4 or whatever, imagine the committee or the bowl selection people were like, yeah, we're going to send you back to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Have fun. Mm-hmm. It would be like that, it's send them, I don't know. It's also about, the Citrus Bowl has a decision to make here. Yes, it could be the highest ranked team. At the end of the day, isn't it just their call in general? You shouldn't have to go. If it's this close with 9-3 teams, it's about who's going to have the biggest fan turnout. Go back to the Gator Bowl 2 years ago. That was basically Williams-Brice South. Alabama and Ole Miss are going to be bummed that they're not going to the playoff. Granted, South Carolina is too, but who really expected Carolina to be in this position to begin with? So Carolina fans are going to turn out. I don't know. Any game in Florida would be great, obviously, but there's something about the Citrus Bowl because it just feels like that's the best bowl game you can go to. It's in Orlando. I don't know. It's just I think at the end of the day, the committee made the decision. There's nothing that can be done about it. I will say this, though. If there's anything that is proven from last night, the committee does not value what you did recently. They value losses more than anything, it seems like. And, the committee, Shane brought it up today, the committee has proven in the past with its different groups of people that, it's a clean slate every week. They look at it with, a fresh set of lenses every week. But obviously that's not the case because, all of a sudden head-to-head matters. And, I know people aren't going to like this, but, Alabama was ranked ahead of Tennessee a few weeks ago after Tennessee had just beaten Alabama. And at the time, they had the same record because Tennessee just got beat by Arkansas. And then from a South Carolina perspective, South Carolina was ranked ahead of LSU, even though they had the same record. And Ward Manuel literally said right afterwards the reasoning why was that the 2 teams were heading in different directions. Shouldn't the same apply here? Where if you're going to use the head-to-head thing, I get it. But at the same time, you literally just said 2-3 weeks ago that, teams are going in different directions. Alabama just lost to Oklahoma 2 weeks ago, and Ole Miss just lost to Florida, and both those teams finished out the year 4-2 in their final 6 games. Meanwhile, South Carolina beats, 4 top 25 teams at the time of playing them, and they're on a 6-game winning streak, and they have one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and they're an exciting team. What is changing? The committee's criteria, I couldn't even tell you what it really is, to be honest, because it changes so often. They move the field goal posts. It's inconsistent at best, and it's a problem that we have. I mean, look, it's humans. Like, it's 13 different people, but all humans have biases, don't they? I just think there are so many problems that it's not going to be fixed anytime soon. And even if it were, we're still going to have issues. That is why, even with the 12-team playoff now, we have a lot more issues, and it's ridiculous, I think.
Your point about South Carolina finishing the season so strong, so solid, again, being one of the most exciting teams in college football right now, compared to an Alabama and Ole Miss that has, quite frankly, struggled to finish out the season, is, I think, the biggest point. And that's where I think, me just being a graduate of the University of South Carolina and someone that wants the best for the program, obviously, that's where it hurts the most, because you see, all right, this is where we're at. We're on an upward trajectory. Things are going super well for South Carolina right now. And if anything, Alabama and Ole Miss have plateaued, if not gotten worse, to end the season. And you still see that South Carolina probably will not end up in a bowl game as good as Ole Miss, as good as Alabama. And you're right. I mean, it does come down to losses at the end of the day. That's all you can chalk it up to, is losses, where you're at. But there's so many other factors that I think a lot of people are a little bit confused about when it came to what we saw yesterday with the college football playoff rankings. But we can't do anything about it. All we can do is sit here and talk about it. And I know that a lot of people listening as well are, pretty disappointed with what we found out yesterday, but you just hope for the best at this point. We'll see how things shake out. I know South Carolina will make the best of it either way. And what a finish to the season for them. We haven't even had the chance to talk about the game yet, Jack. You were obviously there. I sent you a video. I always say I'm like stressed, but I honestly feel like in that moment on Saturday, fourth quarter, let's just take the whole fourth quarter, I felt like a sense of calm. Like, honestly, like, I'm not going to sit there and say I was like completely zen. Like, I was a little bit stressed, but I'm usually way more stressed. I felt like for some reason South Carolina was going to win the game, and they did. So how was it there? How was it at Clemson?
All right, so let's see. It was a great game. Like, honestly, like, seriously, all-time classic. Clemson fans they're a strange group of people. I'm gonna be honest. Kendall, I mean, you know this from being in the press box 2 years ago, and you're right on top of them and stuff. Like, there was a chick trying to flirt with me. It was weird, and then I got people asking me if I'm a Bills scout because I got a Bills beanie on and stuff. I went along with that, ironically enough. And they were like telling me like, "Oh my God, you have to draft Cade Klubnik and stuff and all this and that. And hey, are you bros with Josh Allen?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, for sure." It was funny in that aspect. And then, look, Clemson, it was a great atmosphere. Like, crowd was into it. It was I think that was probably the toughest environment Carolina's played in all year, surprisingly enough. But then, when South Carolina takes the lead in the final minute there with Sellers, which, holy smokes, that dude is unbelievable. Breaking out of 18 tackles is quite frankly absurd. And then seeing it was so funny. It was so funny seeing Clemson fans just sit there like pure shock. I mean, I'm seeing them sit on the benches and stuff, and they're just like in disbelief of what just happened. And South Carolina picks up a huge win. It's unbelievable, that game. And this comment right here, what are we talking about? Lenore Sellers' cheeks? Absolutely not. That is the Heisman you're talking about right there. Look, Sellers, South Carolina doesn't win that game without him. No chance. And he's the difference with this team right now. And it stinks, going back to this playoff conversation one more time, it stinks that one of the most exciting players out there isn't even going to get a chance to potentially lead his team to victory. We don't know what's going to happen in the playoff. And you know what? It's going to be crazy if some of these teams get blown out or whatever. But you know what? South Carolina is the state champs. They got to win over Clemson. And they finished out the year as best they can. They did everything they needed to.
Shane Beamer did say that today. He did say that
That
South
was
Carolina
so
are
funny.
state champs. That's a good line. I appreciate that line. But yeah, I mean, Jeff said I was calm. He said, LOL, calm. He said this right here. I'm not going to say I was like completely zen. Like I wasn't sitting there like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. But I just felt like for some reason, Lenoris was playing so well and Clemson could not tackle him. They couldn't. Like point
No.
blank period, could not tackle him. Like he was on another level. So I just felt like in that final drive when he did score. Now, I was a little bit stressed. The whole thing is with the interception at the end of the game. That was a moment where I was very stressed. But honestly, it worked out perfectly. And had Clemson kicked the field goal, then I would have gone into like major stress mode. But we're good.
Yeah. Seeing
It's all
Demetrius
good.
Knight make that interception at the end of the game. He's such a good story. And Kendall, I know you haven't gotten to really cover the team this year, but I'm telling you, like if you were around this guy every day, like he would be like one of your favorites. Like he is such a good story, Demetrius Knight, coming here to South Carolina, one of the nicest dudes you'll meet. But seriously, like a 6th-year guy transferring to Carolina, his first time in the rivalry, and he makes the game-sealing interception on Cade Klubnik, who Cade played a great game. Clemson didn't even need to beat. Clemson could have been winning the game right there had they kicked a field goal back in the second quarter instead of going for it on 4th and 1. But hey, Clemson, they played a good game for what it's worth. It's just South Carolina made the bigger plays when it mattered most.
Yeah, it was such a good game, and huge shout out to South Carolina for, I think it just speaks to what we've talked about all season long, just their resilience and the way that they're able to continue in games, even when circumstances are not easy, even when things don't go their way. And Lenora Sellers, we talk about it every week now, it seems, but wow, just so impressive. And the fact that he's a freshman, South Carolina fans, and I know you all are, should be so excited because Lenora Sellers is just amazing. And I continue to be so incredibly impressed with him each and every week. And I wish I could see playoff Lenora Sellers, but we will speak that into existence for next year.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, I know it doesn't help the situation, but what an end to the season for South Carolina. And they should be so proud of what they were able to accomplish. I mean, truly, after, the LSU loss, then the Alabama loss, and then the Ole Miss loss, they could have been like, all right. But the way they finished the season, 10 out of 10. Incredible. Also, we haven't given a shout out to our presenting sponsor of the show yet. We're 22 minutes in, and we were just going on and on about the college football playoffs. So, Clint Hammond, we appreciate you.
Yep. Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans right above us here is our always presenting sponsor, the wonderful Clint Hammond. So, if you're in the market looking for a home, or maybe you already have a home and you need help with your mortgage and stuff, well, if you don't know where to go and you need help with it, Clint Hammond is your guy to call. He'll take you through the process step by step and point you in the right direction and get you on track. He's been in the mortgage industry for a very long time. He's a lifelong Gamecock fan, and he's been a longtime supporter of Gamecock Central. So all the right reasons to go with him. If you're interested, give him a call, 803-422-6797. The NMLS number for him is 71597, or you can go to ClintHammond.com. So I want to thank Clint for being a wonderful presenting sponsor of all of our Gamecock Central live programs.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Jack, before we start talking about National Signing Day, I want to talk a little bit about bowl games. I know we kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I just want to go through all possible scenarios, at least as many as we can come up with here for the fans, because obviously when you hear that you're not being considered for the college football playoff, that's a huge bummer. But South Carolina will play in a bowl game, and there are several ways that this could shake out. So what could happen this weekend, Jack, that could affect South Carolina and where it stands in terms of a bowl game?
Yeah, and let me just say, number one, before we get into that conversation, I meant to mention this earlier. Shane did talk about today that I know a lot of people have been asking, like, are people going to, like, who's going to opt out of the bowl games? And this literally gets brought up right here. I'm hoping we don't have too many opt-outs. Well, the good news is Shane feels that same way, that he hopes that a lot of the older players don't end up opting out. And from what he's said today, no one has come up to him saying that they're going to opt out yet. So that's a very good sign. And he pointed out this, Kendall, that it would mean a lot to the players to go ahead and get that 10th win, because as Shane noted today, South Carolina has only done that 4 times in program history. And the last time, coincidentally, was 2013, which seems to be the year that lines up with every new thing that South Carolina has done this year. So, look, I wouldn't be too worried about the opt-outs just yet. I think South Carolina will know more as we kind of get closer to the bowl game. Like, I think specific guys would maybe opt out that have the NFL draft on their minds and stuff. At the same time, though, I think getting to 10 wins and proving a point is such a big deal. I go back to when Alabama got left out of the playoff 2 years ago, which ironic, right? They get left out. But when they had to go play Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl, all their top guys played. Bryce Young, so many other big guys. I think Terry and Arnold, like all these really solid players played in that bowl game, and they beat Kansas State handily. So I think that's what we'll see here with Carolina. As for what needs to happen this weekend, I think you probably just I guess if you want to go to the Citrus Bowl, I think you kind of just hope Alabama gets into the playoff at that point. That would probably require SMU winning the ACC championship. And I think that's the only game that really matters, to be honest, because outside of that, like, the other games really don't mean much in terms of the bigger impact with the SEC and stuff and how bowl games will be decided. If Clemson wins the ACC title, SMU might get knocked out. Then again, maybe they get left in. And that would mean if Alabama's on the outside, Alabama's probably going to be the top team that goes to the Citrus Bowl. And then Ole Miss and South Carolina will probably either go to one of the other 2 Florida Bowls. If we see a situation where Alabama is in the playoff, then I think it just comes down to the committee's discretion and preference of, all right, well, South Carolina and Ole Miss are ranked right behind each other 1 by 1. They could go with what they've done in the past, which is the highest ranked team that's not in the playoff from the SEC. Or maybe they just make the decision of, hey, we really like South Carolina. Let's go with them. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did that. And I think the other team would just get sent to probably the Gator Bowl. But I feel like South Carolina's top choice is probably the Citrus Bowl. Like, I remember a few weeks ago after they beat A&M or Missouri, whoever it was, Citrus Bowl representatives were sitting in on Shane's press conference, and he talked with them for a little bit. It seems like that is their top choice, but we'll have to see. I definitely anticipate them going to Florida. I know people have brought up Music City and stuff. I don't see that being the case. That seems to be a spot for maybe a Florida or a team like Arkansas, maybe a team that's not really in the mix for one of these higher up bowl games. But if you're South Carolina and you're a Gamecock fan, I'd pack warmly to go to Florida. I
am telling you right now, if it's in Florida, I will be there 100%. I mean, I'm kind of planning on going either way, but 100%. We've been talking about the Citrus Bowl for a few weeks now, Jack. So that is something that you and I have both really been hoping.
We can get behind that.
I'm actually like steps away from where the ACC championship is taking place this weekend. I'm looking across the baseball field right now, and I can see the entire fan fest getting set up. I think it starts tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm like right here, right in on the action where the game is going to happen that could potentially affect. I mean, it will affect, not potentially, it definitely will affect where South Carolina lands in terms of a bowl game. So I'll be a little bit stressed out for that one as well. I'll be at a hockey game when it's happening, but I will be locked in.
Yeah. Now, would you go to the game as a fan or would you come with GC? That's the question.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't covered a game yet this year with GC, so I'd have to talk to Shu about it. I think it would be a blast.
Shu,
but I don't know.
Let's bring her aboard. Let's bring her back.
I don't really experience too many games as a fan, so maybe I would have to just go as a fan. You know, I love Orlando too. And
we both do.
Disney World. So yeah, I think it would be a blast, but we'll see. I love Tampa as well. I'm a huge fan of Tampa. I just don't want them to go back to Jacksonville. They went there 2 years ago. So I feel like it's a great opportunity. And it's not to say South Carolina wouldn't be grateful for that, but it is something that I feel we just experienced that. So would rather be in Tampa than Jacksonville. And then obviously want it to be in Orlando, but I think Tampa would still be fun. And it's a good bowl game, obviously a great city, super, super fun. And yeah, we'd have to see. We'd have to go to a Lightning game as well, Jack. Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like the Lightning, but it is what it is. So, I think Florida is optimal. Like I would put your money in the bank on that one, like 100%. Like if they are not going,
Wow.
if they're not
100%.
if they're not in the state of Florida, what are we talking about here? That's another kick in the nuts here. Like if they get sent to some random bowl game in like Nashville or whatever. I'm not saying Nashville's bad, but it's so cold probably around that time of year. And that is for excuse my language, but it's for mediocre teams going to those types of bowl games. South Carolina is a great team, and they deserve to be in one of the better bowl games. But I don't know. And I get a question here: who would they be playing? Probably a Big Ten team, I think, is what we're looking at here. Maybe like an Iowa, I know Illinois has been thrown around a bunch. I think Illinois would be a pretty cool matchup for South Carolina, but we'll see what happens. It's I wish we were talking about a playoff game here, but talking about a bowl game, just hope they go to Florida. That's all that matters.
Well, before we start talking about National Signing Day, Jack, we have one more partner that we would like to give a shout out to.
Yes, let's do it. Let's talk about our good friends over at SeatGeek. So, if you don't know anything about these guys, SeatGeek is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. They're the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And then, of course, you'll watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types to choose from. I've actually been using PrizePicks a little bit more recently. I figured out from a long time ago that I had some PrizePicks funds to play around with this past weekend, and with it being Thanksgiving and games going on, then rivalry week, I decided to get on the action. Now, I'm not going to share how I did because, I lost some, I won some. But, that's the beauty of it, is that you can have a good time picking your favorite players, whether it's Josh Allen on the Bills or Rocket Sanders, Lenore Sellers. You can have a lot of fun pairing up however you want to go about it. So it's what makes PrizePicks the number one daily fantasy sports app. So just go to PrizePicks.com or download the PrizePicks app. Use the code GC, that stands for Gamecock Central, to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. And we just want to thank PrizePicks for being a wonderful sponsor of Gamecock Central.
I was just going to say something. Oh, I remember it. This is so random. I'm not going to bring up any of your teams right now because
don't worry about it.
We'll go down that road for you. I do want to know, though, before we get into National Signing Day, are you a Spotify user?
No, I'm an Apple Music person. I know.
I was ready to hear your Spotify Wrapped.
Kill me in the comments. Is that thing out yet?
Yes, it came out today. So that's why I was asking, because, timely relevance. If you have a number one song or artist, let us know in the comments who yours is. Mine was Sabrina Carpenter. Sabrina Carpenter, and my number one song is like very niche. It's very weird. It's EDM. It's like very much just a random like workout song.
Nice.
And I teach yoga, so I always had it in my class. Anyways, okay. National Signing Day. We're totally switching gears.
Yes.
Really good for South Carolina. Like solid. Like everybody they were planning on signing signed. They flipped a couple of guys. Like very successful day overall for South Carolina. What did Shane Beamer say about it?
Yeah, well, actually, what did Clayton White say about it? Because he was walking by the press conference room and he's like, you could hear him yell, "Flip!" And then he walks by and says, "Merry Flipmas." And South Carolina had just flipped someone. Pulling up the name here, but it was a huge day. Like you got Christian Ingram to sign, huge deal, number one. But you also got Mike Tyler, who a former LSU commit, to flip to South Carolina. He's a tight end from around the area, so that is a huge deal. And then I cannot pronounce this name for the life of me, but I will try my best. Domola Adjaduan. He's an offensive tackle from Georgia Tech that flipped to South Carolina. That is, as Gamecock Central put it on their Twitter, a signing day stunner. Absolutely massive. And Shane Beamer and this staff flipping so many guys, it's huge. So kind of what he had to say, look, I think getting double-digit players from this state is massive. And that's what he had to point out. He did admit that he felt like North Carolina was a state that South Carolina hadn't done a great job recruiting in the past, but they were able to sign 3 guys out of that state today. And the big thing is, this is a place that's popular and attractive to a lot of people right now. And I asked him about this later in the press conference. I asked him, I'm trying to remember the wording, but like, how is this year in recruiting different from years past? Because obviously winning changes everything. And that's basically what he pointed out, is that winning makes everything better. And there's a lot more energy when you're nationally ranked compared to when you were like 2-6 last year. And there have been a lot of guys hitting up South Carolina and the players and the coaches that maybe once didn't believe in South Carolina, and they're like, oh, you guys are having all this success now and stuff. Like, I want to come be a part of that. And Shane obviously keeps his receipts and remembers that, you didn't want to be a part of this a little while ago. Now you do. Funny how that works. So, but the reason why they were able to keep the group of 2025 guys together came down to the fact of what they've been able to do this year. Like, there's so much excitement in and out of this building, and it's great to see that South Carolina is having the success they're having. Again, we don't know what's going to happen next year with the team and how many games they win or whatever. But I can see this. Winning 9 to 10 games, it's a recipe for success. The more you win, the more players are going to want to come. Money is obviously a big deal for a lot of these kids with NIL and stuff, and some may go to the highest bidder. But there is truly nothing like going to a team that has a winning culture, a great program, and a solid pedigree of being first class. And that's what South Carolina has to offer, just beyond dollars.
Yeah, a few things that stand out to me, and one you touched on already, is just the fact that South Carolina was able to recruit so well for this class in the state of South Carolina. And that's something we've seen in the Shane Beamer era. Every year it's been really solid, the in-state recruiting, but this year the in-state recruiting, absolutely unbelievable. And I think another thing that is so key to point out about National Signing Day is the fact that South Carolina was able to get every guy to sign.
Crazy.
And we're not waiting. We're doing this now at 5:45 at night. You're not waiting until super late into the night. Like, you got the majority of these guys pretty early on in the day. And that's absolutely massive if you're South Carolina, not to mention the guys who flipped from other programs to commit to South Carolina. Again, so huge. So that's another part of it. It's like, it was a drama-free day. And I think when you can say that about National Signing Day, you don't have to worry about someone flipping from you, or you're not worried about waiting till the last second, or someone decides, oh, we're not going to sign today, or whatever it might be. You're getting everybody signed. Everything is good. Signed, sealed, delivered. That's huge for South Carolina. So that is another thing that I think we cannot overemphasize, is just how smooth today went, which not every program can say the same. So I think that's a huge testament to what South Carolina's done, not only Shane Beamer, but position coaches and people that work behind the scenes to make the visits so absolutely incredible. And when people come to Columbia and these players and their families, they're like, yes, this culture, this is what I want to be a part of. And Shane Beamer talked about that as well. Just the people behind the scenes, like Jessica Jackson. She's one name that obviously comes to mind, but there are plenty of others that really go the extra mile to make sure that South Carolina stands out to these players when they come on their visits. It's paying off, and we're seeing that here today.
Most definitely. You hit the nail on the head on every point you just made. This is really a team effort, is what Shane was getting at today. Like, it's not just him. It's not just the coaches. It's everyone. And you're right. It goes from top to bottom. Like, when they have a recruit on a visit, it's like all hands on deck, and everyone is doing their part. And they stick to who they are. I think it's such an important thing. Like, Shane brought that up at least 3 or 4 times today, like with different specific answers to questions. But like, the main point of today, if we learn anything about the way this team recruits, they don't switch up. They stick to their values, and they are who they are. They, prioritize the team and the players and doing things the right way and winning with class, losing with class, all that sort of stuff. So I think Shane and the staff did a great job today. Again, he really shouted out a lot of guys today, like Mike Furry. He said did a grand slam job bringing in all these receivers. Like, I mean, look, it wasn't easy to get guys like Malik Clark, Lex Cyrus. Malik Clark was originally committed to Florida State, and for one reason or another, he's now decided to sign with South Carolina. Same deal with Lex Cyrus. The fact that South Carolina, I think if anything stands out today, the fact that South Carolina was able to hold off a blue blood powerhouse type program like Penn State on an in-state wide receiver that they wanted. The fact that South Carolina was able to do that and sign Lex Cyrus today, keep him on board, is massive. And they were able to flip multiple guys today. Sure, they did suffer a loss or two. Like Jared Smith decided to sign with Auburn. Then again, he's an in-state guy. Kevin Wynn, who's from Georgia, committed to who did he commit to? Florida State. So, look, stuff like that happens, but I think South Carolina definitely took way more wins than losses today. And like you said, I think today pretty much went about as smooth as possible. And that doesn't always happen, like you pointed out, Kendall. It's very true that this could have been a rough day. But you know what? I think all things considered, right in between the mess that is the college football playoff drama, South Carolina had a pretty good day today. And I think that is one thing that a lot of Gamecock fans could be happy about.
Yeah, I think if we can take anything from the show, and obviously there is the disappointment that is there and the shock, as Shane Beamer said, about the college football playoff rankings. The one thing that I can personally take away from this last week and what we've seen throughout this season for South Carolina leading up to this National Signing Day is that South Carolina is in a great place and they are in great hands with the people that are leading the program. They have a great group of guys that play for the team. They have a fantastic staff. They have a great fan base supporting them. And even though obviously there was a lot of disappointment hearing those results last night and people probably still feel disappointed even here today, South Carolina, I would rather be South Carolina than majority of other programs in this country right now because they are on the up and up. They're on an upward trajectory. So even though it's not always a linear path and you're going to face bumps in the road, like not getting maybe the recognition that you think you deserve from the committee, South Carolina is in a fantastic spot. That's recruiting wise. That's on the field. That's with everyone that's involved in the program. And I think that is absolutely massive. So just a huge, huge shout out to all of the people that have made that possible. And obviously the fans that have been super supportive throughout. And I think we can look at it in a glass half full perspective and really see, how far South Carolina has come and how far they still have to go, but really the path that they're on and how exciting it is and how much can be done with this program and with this team.
Yeah. Everyone wants the instant gratitude and stuff and the gratification of, success. And I get that. Like, I think a lot of people are out there still thinking that South Carolina should be in the playoff, and rightfully so. You have the right to be displeased with what happened yesterday. I totally get that. However, let's go back to last year when South Carolina lost to Clemson and the season was 5-7. And there's so many question marks about, okay, what's the status of Shane's job moving forward? Does he get on the hot seat? What is next for this team? Are they going to lose all these players and stuff? They got a lot of older guys that might end up leaving. And we're a year later now, and South Carolina is in just about as good of a spot as it has ever been. And yes, they didn't make the playoff. I get that. But at the same time, patience. Things take time to develop. Just because they didn't make the playoff this year doesn't mean they can't make it next year. They most certainly can. And with Shane at the helm and with the staff he has and with the players they're bringing in, they're going to be set up for some long-term success here. So, yeah, they didn't make it in year one of this post-5-7 thing. But you know what? They're going to be fine. And I think this is the start of hopefully the last time we see South Carolina in a spot like this where the committee denies them the right to get into the playoff. Hopefully next year we're talking about South Carolina leaving no doubt and making the playoff without question and making the committee's job pretty easy of, yeah, we're putting you in the playoff. It's pretty easy. So all this good stuff going on right now is awesome for the program, and they will be just fine moving forward. So sad now, but you know what? It'll be okay in the future, Gamecock fans.
Yes, 100%. Jack, before we get out of here, this isn't South Carolina related, but it's SEC related. What do you think? Georgia, Texas?
I did send out staff picks, so I know many people haven't gotten back.
I haven't answered yet. So this will be my first time actually saying who I think will win.
I think I'm going to go with Texas. I think Texas. It's always tough to beat a team twice. And there is the possibility they play a third time in the CFP potentially at some point. I've always said it's tough to beat a team twice, and we've seen that before with the many times of Alabama and Georgia facing off in the SEC title game and then the national championship or playoff, whatever you may have it, or even in the regular season. I think the same is true here. Georgia is basically at home in Atlanta at the SEC title game. But Texas, I think they're going to learn a lot from what happened when they lost a few months ago.
I'm going Texas as well. I think Texas will win, and I think it'll be a good game. Yeah, Georgia obviously fortunate that the game is in Atlanta, but Texas fans travel and Texas fans are excited about this team. So yeah, I'm going Texas. These are some funny comments here. Yeah. Unfortunately, for the people that hope they're both losers, that's not going to happen. So
no, fortunately,
Jack and I are both going Texas. We'll see how everybody else decides to go on Gamecock Central. How am I doing, by the way? Do you have like a list where it says how well we've done this season?
Yeah. I usually do the updated standings, but honestly, Kendall, I have not done that yet this week. But I'll let me look at the last.
I'm scared. If I'm in last, don't.
I don't think you.
I literally just go through like that. Like I don't look at hardly anything. I just go based off of like sheer knowledge.
I'll do this real quick. So you pick Clemson to lose. That's 1-0. Let's see. Where are you at on this? Tennessee to win, that's 2-0. Ohio State, that's 2-1. 3-1 for Alabama, 4-1. LSU won this weekend, 5-1. Texas won, 6-1. You picked JMU for whatever reason because Marshall beat them, 6-2. And then Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech beat Virginia this weekend, right? So you had a good week. That would have meant you're 7-2 in the ranking or in the on the staff picks for last week. And you were 68-49. So you're in a really good spot, Kendall. You're right up there.
Middle of the pack?
Yes. Middle of the pack is what I haven't calculated the whole standings, but just looking at it right now, you're right in there with all these other people. So
I will take it. I am fine with being middle of the pack. I'm more stressed out about my fantasy football team. This is a must-win week for me to make the playoff. I have a 14-team league, and there's only 4 teams that make the playoff.
What?
Yes. So I have to win this week. I'm in.
Oh, man.
So if I don't win this week, I'm tied for 4th, but I have more points earned than the guy who is also in 4th place. So he's technically behind me. So I have to win this week. And I have a lot of guys on bye. So I'm very stressed. As you can tell, I'm a competitive person.
We need an update next week.
Oh, you will get an update next week. Yeah, I am totally locked in. But yeah, I'm happy to hear that I'm middle of the pack for the staff picks. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how anybody else does it on staff. I would imagine people probably put in more time and effort than I do. This is always what happens, everybody. Jack will send a text in our Gamecock Central group chat, which always is like going crazy. Like that Gamecock Central group chat never rests. There's like always something that's being texted. But Jack will send a text and he'll say, please get your picks into me by 10 a.m. And it's like 9:45, like the day that they're doing
Everyone's so late.
So I like go on really, really quick and I look at the list and I just like bold the teams that I think are going to win. And I don't look at anything. I don't look at anything at all. I just go simply based on what my heart tells me, what I know about the teams, what I know about the matchups, and that's it.
It works out pretty well.
Anyone else's opinion, it's nothing. It's just all straight up me essentially guessing.
Good stuff.
Well, I'm happy to hear that I'm not in last because I honestly thought, wow, I might be in last place.
No, so you're doing a good job. So don't worry about it. You're doing solid. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us here on GC Live. What a fun episode. So much to talk about and so much more to talk about. We will be back next week with a lot more. I feel like every week there is so much to get to. So yeah, we appreciate all of you joining us here on GC Live. Happy National Signing Day, a great National Signing Day for South Carolina. Yes, we know it's the early signing day, but we just call it National Signing Day. So anyways, for Jack Veltri, I'm Kendall Smith. Have an amazing rest of your Wednesday, everybody. This has been GC Live here on Gamecock Central, and we will see you all soon.